It's Chump. I just saw the most amazing thing in my entire life. First, you gotta do the truffle shuffle. Come on!
Welcome back to another episode of Growing Up Punk, a podcast about punk rock and all of its friends. I am one of the hosts, Aaron, and it's just me today, as we're going to be getting into an interview here in a few minutes, and so I just wanted to touch base and welcome you here. If this is your first time listening, then thank you so much for checking out the show. If you want more info on other episodes, you can find us on all of your favorite podcast networks. You can find us on social media at Growing Punk Pod on Instagram and Twitter. So go there and check us out, send us a message, leave us some comments. If you are a long-time listener, thanks so much for coming back. We greatly appreciate you, and we hope you really enjoy this really cool interview that I got to do with two of the guys from the band Slick Shoes. So I was able to talk with Jackson and Jeremiah of the band Slick Shoes. If you're not familiar with them, they are a poppy skate punk band from the mid-90s, and they will be at the end of September releasing their first new album in 17 years. So there's been quite a break between their last release and this one, and it's going to be an awesome one. And so if you haven't checked them out, go check them out on your streaming services. They have a new song out, and it's amazing, and they're going to be releasing new ones in the coming weeks, so keep your eye on that. This was a really fun conversation to have. This is a very influential band for me, and so it was awesome to get to sit down and get some inside info on all of their albums. So we go through their whole discography. We touch on what it was like touring, getting signed, working with different producers, getting to be in a studio with the band all practicing in there. And we get lots of really, really cool tidbits about, what it was like being a band, in that era where there was no social media and all that kind of stuff versus now where, it's all streaming. There's lots of great stuff in this. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation, and we will check you next time. Well, thanks so much, guys, for making the time to be here. This has been a long time coming, maybe one of the most anticipated conversations I've ever had. So thanks for making it happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got Jackson and Jeremiah from the band Slick Shoes on tonight. And
hello.
Welcome.
How you doing?
From sunny California.
Ish. It's more like hot California.
Oh, okay, it's not sunny?
Well, it's sunny and burning hot.
Okay.
Unless you where Jeremiah's at. He just moved. He's by the beach.
Well, stinking getting the best of both worlds, hey?
Yeah, it's a move we've wanted to make for a long time. So it's actually nice, man. Actually be able to go outside and do some stuff. So I'm not hating it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, well, this is, like I was just saying, this has been a long time coming. You guys are a band that's, been really influential for myself and David, who co-hosts the show with me, and, I mean, tons of other people. So it's, this is a dream come true to be talking with you guys and getting some inside info on the albums that were so influential on us.
That's very kind of you to say, man. Like, appreciate that for sure. And it means a lot to us, too, on our end, like, we don't do these things a lot, so I just appreciate you asking us to even do the show.
Yeah, well, of course. Awesome. So we're just going to go through all of your guys' records and just kind of touch base on each, and I'm always super interested to kind of hear all the maybe nerdy little tidbits about albums that maybe lots of music fans don't necessarily pick up on, but I'm excited to kind of hear your thoughts on these. So let's start with the Slick Shoes EP that was released on January 21st, 1997. Does that seem like another lifetime ago?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that was I'm bad at math, but 25 years or something like that, or
Shoot.
23,
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
It's been a minute.
So when you guys recorded this, how old were these songs by that point?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremiah, but I don't think those songs were more than 6 months old.
No, they were. I think they were even newer than that. Some of them. I think 2 of them might have been a couple months old, and a couple we'd probably written a week or 2 before.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Wow. And when you guys wrote these and recorded them, like, what was the hopes with these at this point? I mean, you guys were really young. Were you recording it with the hopes of trying to get signed, or kind of how did that all happen?
Well, for me, I think everybody that was recording any music at the time probably hoped to get signed. When we did the EP, I mean, like NoFX, Punk in Drublic was huge, and we were all big punk fans and just music fans in general, and we wanted to make music as well. We're big fans of like MXPX, Face to Face, Lagwagon, Strung Out, Descendants, of course, all. And I think that our goal when we were writing that was just to sort of learn the genre, as well as just become a band together and develop and grow as musicians. We started writing together and recording, etc. I don't think the goal was ever to not get signed, but also we were playing together. Guys get together and have poker night, or watch football, or start a punk band, whatever. So that was kind of the goal at the time, in my opinion.
For these, like when you guys wrote these, how long had you guys been a band by this point already?
Oh God, that was probably 6 months or a year, maybe.
So was this kind of the first official release you guys had done?
The EP, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we had done a couple demos prior to that, and it was mostly just circulated locally. The first one, and then the second one was actually the one we sent to Tooth and Nail, and that was what they signed us based off of, was that second EP or second demo, I guess. Ryan was literally learning the songs, like he was literally learning the lyrics as he was singing and recording them.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy. So you guys just sent that in, and that's kind of how everything happened, or how did you guys get in touch with Tooth and Nail?
Actually, I think somebody else sent it in for us.
Yeah,
I forgot his name. Mark Morrison might have been his name.
I think that's right. That sounds right.
Yeah. So he sent it into Tooth and Nail on our behalf, and they called us. If I might have gotten the details a little messed up, but that's how I remember it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been a long time. You got to forgive us, man.
Yeah. No, that's all good. So they just call you up and they just say, "Hey, we got your album in the mail. We'd like to talk more." Or how does that whole process kind of come to be, especially when you're that young?
Yeah, how was that? I think that they said that they wanted to do an EP with us, just to kind of see how it went. And of course, we jumped at it. We did the EP with Steve Kravac at West Beach. So yeah, we did 4 songs. It wasn't a full here's a record deal. I think we missed a compilation that Tooth and Nail had put a lot of new bands on, and so they did it. They were gracious enough to do a 4-song EP with us. We did that, and then they signed us for a continued contract for other albums after that. Does that sound right, Jeremiah?
Yeah. I think it was. They kind of went back and forth on the demo, and they were interested in us, but they didn't sign bands that they didn't get a chance to see live, and they were just really busy at that time, and they didn't have time to come see us, and so. And I mean, to be honest, we probably didn't have too many good shows anyway we'd want them to come to.
Yeah.
And so the happy medium was like, okay, let's just see what you can do. We got 2 days in a studio, and that's not a lot of time, man. When you talk about like setting up drums and miking and, and trying to get bass tone out of like a crappy bass and like no amp. And I mean, it's a miracle the thing ever saw the light of day. I mean, just the fact that Steve was able to do something with the equipment that we had and 2 days to work with, it was fun.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's really cool. Kind of how those pieces play together, when there's not, social media and all these other ways of getting your band out there. You're just kind of, hoping for the best on a lot of those things. Had you guys sent that demo to other labels, or was Tooth and Nail kind of the dream? And that's, I mean, I guess you guys said a friend sent it there, but had you kind of shopped it around a bit, or What were you guys hoping
I don't
for?
recall that I don't recall we shopped it around a whole bunch. I think that I think we'd made the first 2 demo tapes as something we could sell at shows. I think we may have sent one in to Tooth and Nail at one point, and we sent it to the wrong person. I think we sent it to like Bob Moon, who had produced the first couple MXPX records,
Right.
not realizing that he wasn't Tooth and Nail staff at the time or something along those lines. But yeah, that was on the first EP or the first demo that we had done. And then after that, yeah, I don't recall sending it back to Tooth and Nail. That's where we kind of probably owe that Mark Morrison guy a high five.
You know where he's still at?
I have no idea. No.
That's funny because that's not the first time that I've heard of a band getting signed by, you know, a buddy sending something in and then they get, you know, an email or a phone call from this record label and they think it's a prank and, you know, it just takes a while because they're like, well, we didn't send this in. How would they even know about us?
Right.
Well, that's cool. Any other kind of specific memories around this EP?
We were all just super scared. Everything on that EP is just so fast because I think we got in the studio and we were so nervous and just adrenalized and pumped up to be doing something in a real studio with a real producer. Just happy to be there, you know?
Yeah. How did Steve react to you guys? Was he like pretty kind of gentle with a younger band, or was he?
I think yes and no is the right answer to that. So like for me, just like on a slightly geeky level, I rolled into the studio with like 2 guitars, a Telecaster and an Ibanez. And I was really comfortable with the Ibanez with the Floyd Rose and started playing that. And the first thing he did is ask me to remove the Ibanez from the studio. So
he just wouldn't have any of that?
No. And I can see his point. So we ended up tracking out with like this really cool Telecaster I had, and we double tracked it. So that's what I did with guitars on the EP. So that was cool. And he had all these great old amps, which were fun to work with. And he had all this experience, you know, working with other bands and had all this knowledge. So that was kind of helpful for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually didn't realize that you guys got in with Steve that early on. I didn't think it was until, you know, the further albums down. So that's a really cool little tidbit there for music nerds out there. And it's also, you know, I guess with signing with a label like Tooth and Nail, just one of those kind of perks where, you know, you probably would never get in with a producer like that as a, you know, a smaller kind of no-name band. And so to get that opportunity must have been really amazing.
Yeah, it was super fun. We were really excited.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was like Jackson already said, it was kind of like our trial to see how we would do in a studio just with like that amount of time and just kind of see. I think just to get something out so that people could kind of Tooth and Nail could see how people are going to respond to what we were putting together, you know. And I remember like even before it came out, they were putting it like if you called Tooth and Nail back then, they put you on hold. You would be listening to music, and it would usually be something that was new that was coming out or maybe wasn't out yet. And they put our EP on there, and it was like on a rotation. And the feedback they got from what they said to us was like so good that they were like, okay, we don't need to see you live. We're gonna do this like full-fledged deal with you guys. It turned into like a 1+3 deal or something.
I think it was a 3+1 actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got to do Rusty, Burnout, and then another record with an option for a 4th, I think it was.
Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't think I've ever heard of a band getting signed off of hold music. That's definitely a first, definitely unique. Awesome. Well, let's move on to Rusty. That came out June 24th, 1997, so not even that long after that EP. So when did you guys start writing for Rusty after that initial EP was released?
Well, I think a lot of the songs for Rusty were already written when we did the EP. When we did the EP, Tooth and Nail told us to kind of hold on to some material if we had more stuff.
Oh, okay.
So that we didn't just put everything on the EP, you know. Some of it was actually written or rewritten in the studio. So Rusty was actually recorded at West Beach, right, Jeremiah? Rusty? And we were stoked. Yeah, it was, recorded at West Beach.
We, no. Well, part of it was the vocals were done. So what happened was we went up, this is kind of cool. We went up to
Razor's Edge.
Yeah, we went to play the record release parties for Life in General when it was coming out. And so we played one show at the Rock Candy in Seattle, and then we played, I think it was La Luna the next night, or was it I can't remember, the one in Portland. And then we stayed in Portland that night. And then the next morning we got up and Ryan's dad comes out because we'd ridden in their Suburban and we pulled the trailer. And he asked us, says, "Hey man, have any of you guys been down to the trailer yet this morning?" And we were like, "No." And he said, "Well, I just went down there and the trailer's wide open." And we were supposed to be in the studio that next day in San Francisco and at the Razor's Edge, which is where a lot of the Fat Records bands had recorded. And so we wake up basically to find out that, like, oh shoot, Jackson's only guitar has been stolen.
Oh no.
We have now we have to wait around for a police report for like 6 hours. And it was bad times, man. Like we were all just like freaking out. So now we're like, now what do we do? Like we have 2 weeks booked in the studio. We just lost the first day already. And we ended up getting there like midnight or something like that. We spent 2 weeks recording. And the producer just, I don't want to speak ill of the guy, but like, it just wasn't going well and it took a lot longer. And part of that was probably me, because I didn't have a lot of studio experience and things didn't go great. And I'll just put this out there. Jackson ended up finishing the bass tracks. He did like more than half the bass tracks because we were just running out of time, and it was kind of like, look, we need to at least finish the music here. Let's finish the vocals. We'll go back to Hollywood and we'll go back to Steve Herback and we'll finish vocals there. And so it was kind of to answer the question, I guess. The music was all done at the Razor's Edge in San Francisco, and all the vocals were all done at West Beach.
Wow, that's quite the experience to kind of start, a cycle for that album. That sucks that kind of stuff happened.
Well, in Jeremiah's defense, though, the bass parts were written by Jeremiah, so I just had to copy him in the studio.
Well, there you go.
I think with Rusty, I think there was I think we got to spend like about 2 or 3 days on guitar. I think that was all we had for Rusty, and then we spent like 2 or 3 days on bass. But the cool thing is Steve's really focused on vocals, and that's one of his things. Is he's really good at producing vocals and pulling out hooks or maybe like musical surprises from people, if that makes sense. Like, hey, can you just try something different in this spot? And so then we'd experiment on the fly, and then you get this like fresh sort of new idea that would pop into a song. So we kind of did that with Steve. Sorry for getting Razor's Edge and West Beach mixed up, but yeah, that was one of those fun adventures, man.
And did you guys adapt to that pretty well? Like, was that hard for you to just try something different on the fly, or did that kind of breathe new life into something you'd been, maybe playing a bunch?
I kind of feel like the songs were already there when we did Rusty. So like anything that was maybe on the fly was just kind of a smaller part, if that makes sense.
It would be like maybe Ryan singing like in a lower register, and Steve would be like, "Hey, why don't we bring it up a little bit and kind of like get a little air underneath it, and kind of just pitch wise, just like bring the pitch up, maybe I don't know, a third or a fifth, or I don't know these musical terms, but I'm just a bass player, man. Like don't expect much from me."
Yeah, and I still think like Ryan, when we did vocals, he just killed it. But also at the time, Ryan was still like, I think 15, maybe 16 when we did Rusty.
That blows my mind.
Just turned 15.
Yeah, no, he just crushed it too. I mean, because going into the studio with as little experience as we had at the time, you still feel kind of green. You're not as confident. So you're around all these producers that know how other stuff goes. They know how to record. They know how to produce. They know how to get all these good sounds. So we were not only just, trying to put our songs down, but, learn from the people that we were around at the time.
Right. Yeah. No.
Plus also we're just music fans, huge fans of like, Strung Out and Face to Face and No Effects and MXPX. And at the same time too, when we wrote Rusty, Joe and I know Jeremiah, everybody in the band is just like big music fans. And, we listen to more than just, like that new school punk rock sound. We come from different like post-punk backgrounds, alternative backgrounds, things like that. So I think with Rusty, you can actually hear some of that come through. You could probably maybe hear some Face to Face or some of those influences come out on that record, but you can also hear like some Super Drag influences or some Sunny Day Real Estate or some Smashing Pumpkins influences come out on that record.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear now, because when I got this album, like, this was one of the first punk albums I got. So I discovered Rusty at a bookstore. I was still kind of listening to rock music, and I saw the cover, and it caught my eye, and so I put the demo tape in, and it seriously changed my life. Like, I put that on, and I finally knew what it was that I was looking for. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's like I would listen to rock albums, and every time, a slower song, because every rock album would have, a slower song, or, 90s alternative band. And I was always like, oh, fast forward, see what the next one's like. And listening to an album that was just fast from beginning to end, similar to MXPX's life in general, it was just like finally music that I've been looking for. I didn't know what it was until that album caught my eye.
That's cool, man.
Thank you. That's cool to hear.
And it was a funny story with that is it was still I don't know how old I would have been, maybe 12, 13. So my parents were still kind of like listening to the music that I bought before I could listen to it or whatever. And I remember, so my mom would like sit me down with the lyrics book, and and the line that stood out to her was, "A girl is a wall that no one can climb." and she wanted me to explain to her what I thought that meant, and I was like, I don't know,
right.
Mom. Like,
so what's cool? I remember listening to that first podcast that I'd heard from you guys, where you guys were talking about Rusty and Burnout, and that lyrics pretty close. I wrote that song about my wife, she's still my wife, and I love her. She's amazing. It doesn't say a girl is a wall that you can't. I think it said something along the lines of "up goes a wall that you can't climb," and I think that had more to do with just being protective of yourself, or maybe just being in a relationship as a female and being protective of your, So it of course, a girl is not a wall that you can climb, or whatever. But I think the lyrics a little different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at the time. So I'm married to the most beautiful woman ever. We've got 4 beautiful children. But at the time, I was just dealing with the fact that I'm in this really cool relationship with an amazing woman, and just dealing with the fact of like, she, of course, like, she's got her own feelings. She's got her own issues with relationships, just like I do. And that song was more just, I don't want to fail this. That was sort of like where that song comes from. If that makes any sense. I've never been like really open about like lyrics and things like that, because I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But at the time, that song was more just talking about falling in love with somebody and not wanting to disappoint them.
Yeah. Sorry, to clarify, I'm not mocking the lyric by any means. It was just a funny line that my mom, for some reason, that line stood out, and she like wanted me to explain what it was. And I was like, I don't know, Mom, just let me listen to my music. Like, so yeah, it had nothing to do with what the lyric was. It's just found it funny that was the one that stood out, and for some reason she wants some explanation. So, but yeah, no, that's cool to get some kind of behind the scenes of what that was. So that's awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
Who came up with the name Rusty?
So I think we all talked about it as a band. Nobody had an idea what we were going to call that record. And from my memory, I think I kind of had a hand in naming it. Yeah. And we were all staying at Razor's Edge. And that's like this haunted row house in San Francisco, right up the street from the Satanic Temple or whatever that is.
Oh my God!
Anyway,
crazy.
So we're staying in Rusty. It's like probably the longest any of us have been away from home or away from our families. And we're talking about being so close to the Golden Gate Bridge. And I was like, why is it called the Golden Gate Bridge? It's rust colored. So that's probably where Rusty came from.
Oh, that's cool. I always thought it was an interesting album title because, I didn't really see anything from the lyrics, or, there was no song titled that. Or no, there was a song titled that, right? Right?
Yeah. That's actually, I think, the only song, that song Rusty is the only song we literally wrote in the studio before we recorded it, for drums or anything.
Okay.
Actually, that might have been a song that we on the fly just decided to sort of rewrite in the studio.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. As far as I remember.
Yeah, and I remember that song being on a Truth like skateboard and snowboard surfing video, and that song was on one of the surfing videos, and every time it came on, it was my favorite part of that video. So every time I hear that song, I still picture people surfing.
Oh, that's cool. Good.
So how did this album kind of change where the band was going? Did you guys notice, a significant shift with the release of this album? Was it your first full length? You were kind of, solidified now on Tooth and Nail as a newer band. But, I mean, this album, is for a first full length from a newer band. Like, this album is unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it really changed anything as far as like our thinking. I think, we were just at that time, we were still just kind of like trying to like hang on and figure out where this was going and kind of like how this was going to go. Like, for all we knew, we were going to do one album and then it would be done and that would be it. You know what I mean? Because that happens to so many bands. You get lucky, maybe you get signed, and then like your album doesn't do so well. So I think we all were just kind of like, let's go out and do our best, and then hopefully we have another shot. But I mean, I don't think that we really had like expectations other than we need to work hard and we need to be as good as we can.
Was there any like shift in tour opportunities or anything, or was it still just kind of slugging away as the same as before?
Well, if I remember correctly, Jeremiah, correct me if I'm wrong, like it seemed like we were in a rotation where if you put out an album, I think you did like almost 60 days of touring after that, because there was like a Davden and Tooth and Nail sort of contract where Davden would put out Tooth and Nail bands and book their tours. So it seemed like we were on a rotation of album, tour, 30 days, 30 days each, and then new record, and then 60 more days of touring. Because the bands would go out for like 60 days at a time during the summer and then come back. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, because Ryan was too young to tour. He was still in high school, and his parents. I mean, forgive me, I may be wrong here, but I just don't think that they wanted him to like homeschool or anything like that. And I could be wrong, but so I think the fact that he was still he was young in high school too. It wasn't like he was like a freshman, maybe a sophomore, and so we kind of had to tour in the summer. That was the opportunity, which kind of ended well because we would end in August or whatever. Like I think our last show would sometimes be like Tom Fest or whatever. And then we'd come home and then like we would spend the next 2 to 3 months writing. I remember after Rescue, we spent 2-3 months writing Burnout. And then I think that's kind of, I don't know. I think that's kind of maybe the time Dale Yob joined.
Yeah, that's where we met Dale.
Yeah, because we had toured with 90 Pound Wuss, right? And and he had some kind of a thing with them, and he was done with that band, and he played with us at Tom Fest actually. And then I think after that we were kind of like, man, we've always wanted a second guitar player, and here's a guy that knows our songs. He was a roommate of Chad Pearson, who was also the Militia Group Chad. At the time though, he was mailroom Chad. Like he worked at the Tooth and Nail office, and he was roommates with Dale, and he kept telling us, "Hey man, this guy like he knows all your songs. Like you should really give him a shot if you guys want a second guitar player." And so that tour with 90 Pound Wuss that we did, we kind of talked about it, and then at Tom Fest it was just like, all right, let's give it a shot. Like it'll be fun. Let's just see how it goes,
And that's kind of a drastic change in sound from 90 Pound Wuss. I mean, they were a punk band, but I was actually just listening to I can't remember what album it was. The album with the song "Something Must Break," but it's it's a lot more kind of spazzy. It's not nearly as polished and melodic as Slick Shoes was. So what was that like for him, kind of coming into the band and maybe adjusting his style a bit?
Well, he was in the Cooties too, though.
That's right.
He was in Fan Mail. He was in he was in a bunch of bands. So it wasn't like.
Did he also do Arthur, or is that my mistake?
No, I don't think he was in Arthur. Okay, maybe I just didn't.
Okay.
Because wouldn't have for that timeline, because that Cooties album came out. Would that have been similar to the Rusty era, 96, 97 probably?
You know what? It was right around the same time. I don't remember what came out first. That was another one that got, I think, recorded at West Beach with Steve.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like if I'm not all screwed up, that was after Life in General, right?
Well, I think see, and this is where my memory isn't going to serve anything, but the story that I've heard since then and more recently was that the Cooties recorded there, and Life in General had been recorded with Bob Moon. They were kind of like, wow, like why don't we get this record to sound more like the Cooties record? And you're working with some of the same musicians, And so that relationship's already there with the producer. So I think they went back and re-recorded Life in General there because of the Cooties. But I could be wrong. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
that sounds familiar. So was it a given that you guys were going to go back with Steve for Burnout, or?
I thought with Burnout we had the option of, they talked about West Beach at the time, and I think one of my things was like, well, we know what Steve can do. Let's go back to Steve. I remember having that thought. Am I screwed up on that, Jeremiah?
No, that sounds. I mean, it just seemed like a good natural fit. I think because it was like we're familiar with him. We know what he can do. He's not putting out bad records. I mean, everything sounds
right.
Everything,
so was it? Could we go to Blasting Room and we decided to go with Steve?
I don't think that was. I don't think that was on the table at the time. I don't.
Oh, okay.
Know. I don't
okay,
think
cool.
we would have turned down that opportunity, but
because there were a lot of the newer Tooth and Nail punk bands that were going to the Blasting Room, so I was curious if that was a part of the decision, or maybe if that was just going to happen later.
I mean, we're talking about like what, November '98, and maybe, I mean, the deciding factor at that time too could have been the fact that Ryan was in school. I mean, it could have been like, yeah, you could go to the Blasting Room, but Ryan's going to have to take a month off school. Well, that is an option, So maybe that was an option. It's hard to really think back that far for me. Yeah,
well, there was definitely Steve must have. I mean, there's only a year and a bit in between these albums, but it seemed like I don't know whether it was on his end or just you guys were a lot more kind of skilled. Maybe you've been playing more in that, but the album just it has a much more kind of polished sound to it. It's really full. Not that Rusty wasn't. I guess you add a second guitar player, but at least when I listened to Burnout, I noticed a definite shift kind of in sound.
Yeah, well, again, Rusty was recorded with a different producer at first who did the music pretty much, and then Steve took over the vocals at the end of that production. With Burnout, that was Soup to Nuts Steve on that record. Yeah.
So on Burnout, it's maybe a bit less, kind of shreddy than Rusty was. What was kind of the thought behind that guitar playing, or how were you guys arranging songs and writing songs kind of between Rusty and Burnout?
At the time, that's the first time I'd actually dealt with Steve on guitar solos. So he would say, play like Chuck Berry here. And it was Steve, so I played like Chuck Berry. But a long story short is Steve is a very song-driven person. Right. And he's which is respectable. He's always been really just forward thinking in like drums, vocals, the important part of the song, and you cut the fat out. When you talk about less shreddy, so Burnout, there was some spots where I wanted to maybe be in the studio and do some like solo-y type stuff, if that's what you mean. Yeah. Where we kind of held that back a little bit, which for the song isn't necessarily a bad thing. Right. But yeah, there was some restraint there. The cool thing is, skipping ahead to the new record, after talking to Steve, we got to kind of throw a little more guitar on the new record, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I always wonder what that was like, because I mean, there was so much unique guitar work on Rusty, and I just remember that standing out on Burnout. You open the booklet and it's like, hey, they got two guitar players now. And I think I mentioned that when me and David originally went through this album, was I just felt like there was some points in songs where it's like I just wanted that classic Jackson guitar riff or something right here. But yeah, I have heard lots that Steve does like to cut the fat and kind of keep it more straightforward, which again isn't a bad thing, but I guess it just depends what you're hoping to do.
Are you talking about guitar leads, or because that Burnout's got riffs all over it, man.
Yeah. Sorry,
song, like For Better For Worse, and
yeah. There's definitely riffs on it. Maybe maybe solos, or I don't know.
Right.
I just felt like
there's nothing.
Sorry. Yep.
No. There's just nothing more self-aggrandizing and selfish than a guitar solo, and that's one of the things that Steve's really good at saying. You know what? You're not the singer. Maybe don't play so much right there. But the cool thing is, I'm also a guitar player. So I'm like, you know what, though? I really want to be selfish right now. And I want, I'm, being a lead guitar player, you're always fighting the singer. So,
right.
and I'm kind of speaking tongue in cheek and trying to joke a little bit, but I think Steve's mindset is more like, true like punk rock, Ramones, Bad Religion, where the music is brilliant. It does not lack any technicality in any way, but I don't think that Steve's favorite thing is a rad guitar solo.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's just part of the, trying to take the songs you've brought in and having an outside ear kind of hear things. And yeah, I don't mean any, slight to that. I absolutely love Burnout. I just, a lot of those earlier punk, tooth and nail punk bands, think of, Value Pack, Sidewalk Slam, like they were all pretty kind of simple guitar stuff. And so I always loved that about Slick Shoes is, it was so much more to it. And so maybe there was just at points where I just kind of hoped for more, but that's not a slight to the songs or the songwriting, but maybe just my ear or what I expected to happen or something.
Oh, totally.
So what kind of inspired these songs? So again, like there wasn't a ton of time in between Rusty and this. Were songs and guitar riffs and stuff coming pretty easily to you guys?
I mean, we did a lot of writing together. I think we did some writing on tour even, because we kind of knew we were going to be going into the studio, and we kind of had, I mean, when you're on tour, you have a lot of time where you're just like sitting around a hotel room or just sitting in a van or whatever. And if you're not sound checking or playing or loading in or loading out, like you just have so much time on your hands that I think that we did most of the writing on the. Am I right, Jackson? I'm trying to like.
Yeah, I think you're right. On Burnout, we were writing a lot on tour, but also as soon as we got back home, we were practicing a lot, and we'd get together and just sort of kind of rock out. Sometimes Joe and I would get to the practice space, and just start jamming, and come up with riffs. And Jeremiah and Ryan would get there. I mean, not necessarily in that order, but we just start creating together. And I think that's how Burnout kind of came together. I think also with Burnout, we were all new to touring and making records. And I think with Burnout, we got a little less scared of fitting certain formulas. So where maybe guitar solos or certain riffs might have been missing, there was a certain sort of a darker edge that got to come out with Burnout that you might not have seen on Rusty or the EP for that matter.
I was intrigued to what kind of brought that out. I love that part about Burnout, just kind of a bit more moody and darker. And
right. And I think there was a certain element of us that was just like, okay, we've toured a few times and, we're young and brooding and a little pissed off about nothing in particular. And, that was that.
What inspired the title for that album?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we were burnt out from the 60 days of touring. I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember what inspired that, to be completely honest. Jeremiah, do you remember?
I don't really know. All I know is we were talking like album cover, and we were just like, Rusty was really difficult. I mean, there's a lot of detail and there's a lot of stuff. And there's a lot to go wrong when you do that. I mean, all the little things you start, with a simple thing, and then it's just like, okay, you're putting this image here and this image here, and we were like, hey, no, you can't do that because it looks weird or whatever. And I remember we were talking about Burnout specifically. We were like, okay, we just want to let's just do like a black record with like maybe some like blue flames or something coming up from it or something like that, and then we'll just And I think that the name kind of came after the concept of the art first. So I think it's how we landed on it. It was just kind of like, what do you call it? It's got flames on it. Okay, Burnout just kind of fit. And I don't think anything in particular that was like, you're going to look at and be like, oh, okay, that's obvious.
Yeah, I don't think it was super overthought.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the artwork looking back on it?
It's very 90s.
I don't hate it. I mean, it's very, very simple, and I think that there's a lot of beauty in simple. And again, like there's less to go wrong with it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I remember buying a beanie from, I don't know, some store around that time that pretty much had those same kind of flames going up it. And then I believe I had a Slick Shoes patch that I sewed onto it, and I was just so stoked because I was like, man, I'm the only one that has this awesome Burnout looking beanie.
That's rad.
Yeah, so moving on to Wake Up Screaming. So this came out May 23rd, 2000. So Jackson, you had exited the band by this point, or what kind of happened between these two albums?
Yeah, I don't. For the most part, I think we had written probably 6 or 7 songs for that record, and then I exited. So I will defer to Jeremiah.
Yeah. I mean, we did a good fair amount of writing with Jackson, and I mean, I would say probably half the record. I mean, if not, maybe more even. And I mean, and then there was like a couple ideas that we had written together that maybe we like spun off and tried to like finish, or or whatever, that kind of became part of that record still too. And we were playing shows locally. I think we had Andrew from Sick of Change play guitar at even a couple shows.
Oh yeah,
couldn't make it to. And what's his last name? Tremblay, Andrew Tremblay.
Yes.
Yeah. And in the process, we I think Greg approached Joe and just kind of said, "Hey man, I can play your songs. I'd like to try out." And we hung out with him for a little bit, and like it was cool. And then he came out, and we did a couple runs through the songs, and it was just like, you know what? I mean, he's good. He plays the songs. Like, we get along with him well. And that, honestly, like, when you're in a touring band, the chemistry between the members is probably paramount. So, like, even if you think, like, oh, we could probably get somebody maybe technically better, maybe. He was just so cool. It was just like, all right, man. Like, he's one of the team, And so, shortly after that, I think Dale again was like had talked to somebody, probably Joe, and then he joined and helped us finish writing the record. And then I'm trying to think, it definitely came up that we were going to be able to record at the blasting room with Stefan and Bill, and so we all just agreed to do that, and that was a phenomenal experience, man. We drove out to Fort Collins. And we slept in the studio there, and it was this insane. I don't know if you've seen the blasting room, dude, but it's like you walk in, and there's kind of like a green room to the left, and there's a long hallway. And they've got, I mean, in this building, they've got the studio where they have like a big room for the drums. They've got little smaller rooms for the amps and things like that. But then the Descendants actually had their whole, like, all of their T-shirts, all their merchandise printing and mail happened out of this building. And they had like a kitchen. And they had actually 2 or 3 practice rooms in there, if I remember. And local bands that they were friends with would just come in, and they would just like rent space, or I don't know if they let them use it for free or whatever. But these bands would just come through, and all came in, and all would practice there while we were there. And it was like this. It was just like this religious experience where you're just like, I get to sit in like and watch all of practice, and those guys are gifted musicians, and you're just and we're just like, you're in the presence of greatness, I mean, more than the recording, like I remember those things. But also there was I think Stefan had passed a kidney stone that week, and I don't know if I should mention this, but Bill had some problem that he wrote a song about that ended up on a record later. So I'll just leave that.
Yeah, those are such cool stories. Like you go to this place knowing that the producers are obviously in very prominent bands, but you probably don't think that band's going to be practicing there while we're there. And, to them, they're probably just, well, this is our jam space, so we're going to jam regardless of if there's, a band in the studio recording or whatever.
Right. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. We showed up and it was dark outside, and Bill came out and he greeted us, and he took us in. We actually stayed at his house the first night. And in the morning, we woke up and he cooked us breakfast. And he was hyping up this video, and he's like, "Hey man, before we get started, I just want to like give you guys inspiration and all this stuff." And we're thinking, "Oh shit, this is gonna be like some old Descendants record or just some kind of special performance." And he puts this thing on, and it's this bluegrass, man. It's like 4 dudes with basically acoustic instruments standing around one mic, and they all shred. And it was just this. We were just kind of like, your jaw hits the floor. And he's like, "That's kind of what I'm hoping for with this record." It's just like, okay. Like
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Like, hopefully we can do something, not that sounds like that, but hopefully we can maybe emulate some of that skill, that you see in that. So that was I just thought that was an interesting thing. That's the last thing you expect from this old punk band.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Bluegrass.
Jackson, do you want to speak to why you left the band at that point?
Oh, no, that's not necessary. Just that I was just starting a family and had just gotten married, and there was nothing like bad about it. It was just,
Yeah.
between me and the guys, and it was time for me to do something different.
Yeah, for sure. So what did you think, kind of, did you still, follow the band, what they were releasing? Did you have thoughts on kind of how albums turned out that you weren't on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought Greg did a great job. I thought Wake Up Screaming was really fun to listen to. Just being myself and being sort of I'm kind of like, I don't know, OCD about certain things. There were certain like riff timing things where I was like, oh, I want the timing should have been a little different there. But I mean, that's just like stupid stuff. I thought they did a great job, and I was really proud to be a part of, the band and see them go forward.
Yeah. How did Jeremiah, how did you feel the fans kind of receive this album? Maybe it was a bit more melodic, more mid-tempo than, Rusty and Burnout. Was there, any flack for that, or did things kind of progress, in a positive way?
Yeah, I don't remember getting a lot of negative feedback. I mean, I'm an optimist by nature, though. So I mean, if people were saying bad things, I really don't remember that stuff, and I don't really think about it too much if I do hear it. And honestly, like, I just kind of felt like it's hard to kind of put it in a vacuum, because at the same time, like, we're doing better tours. You know what I mean? We're opening for MXPX in Good Charlotte, and that record was taking off, and that was Angel was on that record, and that kind of really like pushed us to the which, by the way, was written by Jackson and I and Joe and Brian. Like, awesome. So that song, had a lot of success, and it was I think that I didn't notice any slowdown. I don't think anybody was like disappointed that maybe we weren't as fast. Maybe we slowed down a little bit, maybe a little more melodic. And I think, you even kind of fall into like, what do we need to do to get to the next level? And I think there could have been some of that thinking in there, because we had a manager at that point that started like trying to steer us a little bit, and okay, but if you write this a little more maybe radio friendly or whatever, like potentially, like maybe this will help you guys. And it's I don't think we ever really fell into that, but you kind of, it affects your thinking, And so when a producer says, "Hey, slow this down a little bit," you don't push against it as much. You just kind of go, "Okay, well, who am I to argue with Bill Stevenson?" So.
Right. And maybe that's the difference from a listener versus, the actual musician, right? Because a listener can be easily judgmental and be like, "Oh, why isn't this faster?" Whereas the musician's thinking, we've done fast for the last 5 years, maybe we want to do something different, or there's these other opportunities, or, especially around this time, the more melodic pop punk was really blowing up, with Drive-Thru Records and, still lots of Tooth and Nail bands and stuff. And so it's, I know for me, I didn't love this one as much, but I appreciate that input into it, because it makes me realize, if I want a fast record, I can just go back and listen to the other ones, rather than musicians wanting to do something different.
There's a lot of truth to what you're saying. We did want to do something different. If you listen to, let's take Newfound Glory, man. Like, they had a lot of success with like Sticks and Stones and their self-titled album. And I've heard people say things to them like, "Hey, why don't you guys, why isn't this more like that album?" And they're like, "You don't want another one of those records. You already have that record. So why do we want to do that?" And at the same time, I think that there's also a bit of like almost trying to find an identity, because like we had just lost Jackson, who was basically like the primary songwriter for the first two records. And so like, as much as I could, and as much, I don't know about Greg, and I can't really speak for the other guys, but like, as much as I could, when I'm writing a song, I'm thinking like, I'm trying to think, what would Jackson do here? And it's like, yeah, but you're not him, and I can't write those riffs. Like, I'm not. He's way more creative than I am, and he's got a lot more musical vocabulary than I do. So some of that was just like I said, some of the pressure maybe we felt, but also there's a limit to maybe your abilities too. Yeah,
so. That's fair. No, thanks for sharing that. I love that kind of input, because it just helps me realize that, musicians aren't just making it for one type of person, right? They're making it for themselves, they're making it for growth, they're making it for all these other reasons, not just for the music snub. So appreciate that info on that. did you notice, so, this was your third full length on Tooth and Nail, were you noticing kind of a drastic shift in sales at this point, or how are things kind of going on that front?
I don't really know what the numbers are. Like, I know we talked about trying to get those numbers. I think Wake Screaming did really well. I don't know if it did as well as Burnout or not. I imagine that it did, because it probably did better because we were doing, like I said, we were doing bigger tours. We were doing a little more headlining. We had a bigger draw. I mean, it's like you just build the snowball. And I think the further you go, the easier that things move, and so I can't really speak to like what the numbers were at the time, or, but I know we weren't really worried about it. Like, we just kind of, we were able to get on the tours we wanted to. I mean, we never like bought a bus or anything like that. We were always doing the van tours at that time, at least. So, I mean, it wasn't like we were getting rich or anything. Like, we may be able to afford a cell phone now,
Nice, yeah.
So nobody was buying houses or anything like that. We were just, still eating on $10 a day and, doing the best with what we had. And we were able to send some money home on some tours, that always felt good. And then, we found out somebody else spent it, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was the album that I first saw you guys live. So you came and you played a youth event in this little town just outside of Winnipeg. So
that was rad. I loved Winnipeg, dude. That was I think I remember the show, actually.
Yeah, so that would have been in the winter, and you probably had to drive down a highway. Well, I guess you probably flew into Winnipeg, or did you?
No, I think we were on tour. I don't think we flew in. I'm pretty sure we were driving that.
Okay, wow. What did you guys think?
Not.
What did you guys think of that coming up there to the freezing cold?
Oh, you know what? I remember people saying like, "Oh man," I was like, "How cold is it?" "Oh, it's only 20 below. It's not that cold." I'm like,
that's true. That's kind of an average winter day. It gets twice as cold as that for a lot of the winter here. So
yeah, they said it's not 40 below yet. So we're good. You can just wear a coat. You'll be fine. Just put on a toque.
Yeah, there you go.
What's a toque?
Yeah, more things to adjust to. Yeah, that totally blew my mind that, a band like you guys would come up. I was from a small town in that province, small town of 10,000 people. So we never got, any bands coming through there. And so, I would often go to a city like Winnipeg, 3.5 hours away to see shows. And, I couldn't even fathom that a band like you guys would be coming up. So that was so cool. And I think I'd sent you guys some pictures. We got some pictures after, and kind of got to hang out after, just in the open area or whatever. And yeah, that was awesome. Really good memories.
That's funny. You keep like, we never looked at ourselves as like being very big or anything like that. Like I think we always just loved playing. And as long as like, we never really were about really the money or any of that. Like, that would have been nice. I mean, I wouldn't complain if it happened, but I think we just really enjoyed doing it. And if we were able to get expenses covered and then maybe some more on top of that, like we didn't have to get rich doing it, so I remember we did a show in Alaska with Five Iron Frenzy where they just flew us out for like 5 days and they just treated us like great. They took us, we played like 2 different shows and probably around the same time, and they just put us up in a hotel and they would feed us breakfast every day. And it seemed like everybody worked like somewhere else that was like entertainment, like one person worked at like the movie theater, and then another person had a connection at the like inner tube ski lift thing where they would like drag you up the hill and you just go right
yeah.
Inner tubes. And somebody's dad was like a helicopter pilot and they flew us over the glaciers.
Oh wow!
And we didn't have to pay for any of this stuff. Like, this was just like people treating us well, and so I think we were always just kind of grateful for those moments and just for the chances to fly out, and see, maybe we did fly out to Winnipeg. I don't really remember, but for us it was more the experience and just maybe maybe the exposure. You just kind of feel like, as long as we keep doing this, then the more cool things we get to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the biggest differences, back then without having social media, there was so much more space between a fan and a band. So for a kid like me, I would see, your albums in the stores, ads in magazines, you're on Tooth and Nail, so I just assume you guys are doing super well, super popular, and so it's always funny kind of hearing like, oh yeah, we were just kind of a whatever band, still having to work your butt off to to make ends meet, and so it's just such a difference in shift from from then to now, where everything is out in the open on social media for fans to see, and which is really cool to have that interaction. But I kind of miss that, it's like, oh man, like Slick Shoes is here, like these are like, this is the biggest punk band ever. To us it was, right? Where to you guys you're just like, oh, kind of another opportunity to play somewhere kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, let's move on. Let's quickly touch on the split that you guys did with Cooter / Autopilot Off. How did you guys connect with that band, and what brought about releasing music together?
We toured with those guys 2 summers in a row. I think it was 99 and 2000, and they were just the greatest group of guys. Like if you had a best friend, like that you would hang out with or whatever, like as a band, like those guys were just like, they were so energetic, they were so positive, they were so fun, and they're a great band, and they're from New York. And Chris Hughes and Chris Johnson and Phil and Rob, man, those guys were they were just fun to hang out with, and they're fun to play with. And I think just on tour we just started talking about, hey, maybe we can do a split EP. And then they talked about Fueled by Ramen. We were like, yeah, I mean, if Tooth and Nail's cool with that, then, and they were, and let's do it. And I think trying to remember, I think we recorded at the Casbah or something like that, and I think I can't remember for sure. And we recorded with John Maurer, who was like bass player for Social Distortion at the time.
Oh, right on.
And I think we spent a couple days. It was like if I remember, it was like St. Patrick's Day or something like that. And it was a good experience. I mean, maybe not the best. I don't know if the songs were the best. I don't know how people really feel about it. I mean, but it was a fun experience. We got to do something cool and do the split with Cooter, and just kind of have that memory. Just kind of, I don't know. I mean, the songs, a couple of them were written by me. I think one or two of them was written by me, and one was probably written by Greg, or all of us together. And then there was like, I think there was like a funky, like, I don't know, it was like a full synth song. Like it was like,
oh, I don't remember that.
I don't know. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Like there was, you got that in there. I think Sean Kephart, or a friend of ours who did he did our merch on tour and stuff like that. Like he was on it. I think Jordan was on it, Jackson's brother. I think his voice is on there too. It was just a funky, weird, just like, why did we do this song? But I don't know. You guys remember that?
I don't remember. I don't remember that song.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's forget I said anything. In fact, edit all that out. Like, let's not even talk about it.
I can't even find it online. I don't think that one's on streaming services.
Oh, thank God.
So.
Man. It's not even...
All right, then let's move on to Slick Shoes. Came out April 9th, 2002. So this is from something I found online. It says, the foursome talk highly of producer Neil King, who helped breathe life into the album. King wasn't the producer who began with the band on this record. The results from his work with them left Slick Shoes unsatisfied. It wasn't about recording fast or slow, it was about what's comfortable, stated Joe. Nixon went on to explain that Neil was a better match once his schedule was free and he could work with the guys. When listening to the album, this is obvious. Slick Shoes have redefined themselves in their self-titled album. For fans, it'll just be the polishing they've been looking for, and for those who just didn't think Slick Shoes had much left to offer, will stand corrected after listening to this album. What do you guys think about that? Were you hoping to, again, go with a different producer? Or what's the kind of story with Neil on that?
Oh man, I mean, this would be a better question for like Joe probably. I was very much, just kind of like, I was working at the time at this one place, and I didn't have a lot of time to work out of town. I was hoping we would do it closer, and I think Brandon was hoping that Neil King would do it. I think he had done maybe The Undecided, or
yeah,
he did something already with one of the female bands, so they were really big on him doing it for us. And I didn't know much about him, but at this point, when we got to the point of recording this album, as much of writing and stuff that I did on the record, like by the time it came to recording, I was kind of like on my way out. just because by that point I had a 6-month-old baby. I was married. I was living in this crappy apartment and just trying to make ends meet. And the idea of like leaving for me, and this is just for me, man, for leaving the country for a month to record an album at that point just kind of seemed like, I'm going to put myself in harm's way for what, so Brandon graciously flew me out for a weekend, and I tracked all the backs from like a Friday evening, and I think I left at like noon on a Sunday. And then when it was all like that was as much time that I had in the studio on that one, and it was just one weekend. And then when Joe got back, like I went to his house and he played Alone for me with all this, the synthesizer and everything on it, like, and I was like, man, that's a cool song, and I think it came out really well. It's we did something beautiful, but like it was kind of like this is maybe the end of the road for me, at least for now, because it was just too difficult. Like financially, the band couldn't sustain me, so it was time for me to move on. Yeah, as far as production though, I mean, and that being said, I was always really disappointed with the bass tone, and I'm a big bass tone guy, and I really kind of take pride. I thought Burnout had a great bass tone. I think Rusty had a great bass tone. Very different stuff, but when it came to this record, like they said, oh, they got the 65p bass you could play, and I was so stoked. But I didn't have time to change the strings even once, because it was just no, we need to start tracking, and it was just like, it is what it is, like we just have to move forward. Show must go on.
So was that,
if I could chime in though, go ahead. To chime in, the Black Album had a couple of my favorite Slick Shoe songs on it. My Ignorance and I Knew, I think are totally rad, well written songs, melodic, and just fun to listen to.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, there was. I loved this album. I remember you guys were building a new website or something. And you had these like stick figures, concert or something on this website coming soon, and it had a clip from one of the songs on there. And I remember going to that website daily, just listening to that clip, and it was probably like, it felt like 6 months until there was anything else released or the website was up. But man, that little clip of that song kept me going. So that was awesome. So by now, Jackson, you'd been like pretty removed from the band. Like I'm assuming you didn't have any writing on this one. What were your thoughts, on this album overall, besides those few songs that you liked?
Oh, I thought it was really cool. Except the only thing I will say is that song 151 at the end was written, I think, before Ryan was in the band.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a re-record, so. Right?
Yeah. So that one was like pre our EP, and I think 151, the original version, was on one of our first demo tapes. Did I sing on 151, Jeremiah, or was that Ryan?
Man, I think it was probably you. I don't really remember. If it was on our first demo, then it was definitely you.
Yeah, I can't remember back that far. I think with that album, that's the only song where we wrote that together as a 4-piece. But I really enjoyed listening to the record from an outside, standpoint, where I had very little to do with it at all. And again, just so you guys know, like everybody knows, Joe, the drummer, is my brother-in-law, and Ryan's my brother-in-law, and Jeremiah has just been one of my longest lifelong friends. So we're like all family. So when you hear like one of these Slick Shoes records, you're a bunch of like family bros just making a record together. So.
Yeah, that's right. I remember reading that. I think it was in the first interview with you guys in HM magazine. It must have been when Rusty came out that, there was those intermingled family kind of stuff in there. Was that just because you guys were all from the same area, or
it's
what?
A small town, man.
You guys were on like an Amish community.
Yeah, but I think it was more that we kind of all traveled in the same musical circles. So I met Joe when I was 16. I met my wife actually because I had heard her singing, and myself and a friend of mine went to the Vineyard Church to hear my wife sing, and luckily we actually got to start a band together and eventually meet and get married. And I met Ryan when we were doing the Slick Shoes thing, and it all kind of came together, from different bands that we were in. Like Joe and I were in a different band together, etc. So it sort of just like evolved into like this group of people that we all knew going forward doing music together, and it was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Jeremiah, was the extent for you with this album you just went to record and then you were done with the band, or did you do any shows or anything else?
No, that was it. Like after this, it was just kind of like we just decided to part ways because it was I think they could see it on me, and I think that like I knew that I just kind of had to stop at that point, just to do the responsible thing, just to be, go to work and just to try to make ends meet and do what we had to do, and they were going to continue touring, and I just couldn't. I think at that point I just couldn't do it anymore.
So was that hard to give that up, or were you kind of done with it by then? To me that would, you go to the studio, so you're hearing the songs, and it's kind of when you're getting really excited for what's kind of coming after the record's out. It seems like it would be a tough time to leave the band.
I mean, it was bittersweet. I mean, you kind of like this is a certain percent of your identity, kind of like without this, what am I? And I think there's a certain amount of like I'd hate to see, they're going on tour and I'm not going to be with them, and but at the same time, like you got to kind of do what's right for you, at that time. Yeah. And I think, nobody leaves a band because everything's going swimmingly and everything's great and everything and everybody, I mean, it's there you get to be stressed out, and you kind of you got to reassess your priorities, and you just got to kind of know where your exit is, and you got to be willing to pull that trigger and go. And at the time it wasn't fun, and it wasn't something that like I was happy about, but at the same time, looking back, I think, it's easy now to see it was essential. And, here we are, this must be 18 years later or something now that we're talking, and we have it all. Like, now I've got a family, and I've got a great job, and we still get to do these like cool shows, and we still get to write together, and we still get to hang out, as best friends. And it's like, if I tried to force it, like, who knows what kind of spiral path I could have ended up down, and sure, who knows what happens. You can get so bitter about things, and I think that just leaving, making peace with it, and then just letting everything move forward, that's kind of what I did with it, and I think everybody has their own time when they have to do that. So yeah, I guess every good thing has to come to an end, right? And you're moving on to something else good, right? You're starting a family, and getting to enjoy being at home more. So it's you were giving up something, but you were also gaining something as well. So I think that makes it a lot easier, instead of just getting kicked out of a band you wanted to keep being in, and you're feeling kind of screwed or whatever. So yeah. So the next album, Far From Nowhere. So I mean, neither of you guys were on this one. There was a lot of changes with this one. There's more members, they changed labels. There was a bit more time between the last album and this one. Did you guys, by this point, were you, so completely kind of out that you just didn't really pay much attention to it, or because you were, you're still connected through, being married to each other's siblings or whatever, that you were still a part of it enough to, kind of be there? Or what are your thoughts on this album?
I thought it was a great album. I think everybody in the band just killed it. There was so much great guitar playing on that record. The vocals, the drums were amazing. Just good songs. I was just a fan of that record personally.
Yeah, no, I gotta agree. Like it certainly didn't hurt. It certainly didn't hurt the Slick Shoes brand when that came out. I think everybody was kind of like, in a lot of senses, I think it kind of revitalized. Getting back to some of the faster melodic stuff, especially after that self-titled album. And I heard you guys, the first podcast we listened to, you guys when you guys were doing the review and everything, and I kind of like I know that it like bummed you out when I was, when I said something. I think I replied to you or something like that. But like when Jackson and we were actually in the same car, or in the same work truck, coming back from a job that we were doing, and we were listening to it at the same time. And like when you guys were saying, this is probably my least favorite record, I was like, what, I don't disagree with it. I mean, there are some songs I think that are really, really good on as far as the self-titled, not. And then I think that getting back to Far From Nowhere, like they kind of brought back what we what we were missing for, maybe an album and a half,
Hmm.
and so it was cool to hear that. And I mean, even when we started playing shows, and it was kind of like, okay, I've got to learn these bass parts. Like, there's a lot of really good stuff on there, and it's impressive, and it challenged me, and it was kind of like, okay, now I'm forced to kind of up or at least like meet the ante, and yeah, good album, very very melodic. I love it.
Yeah, and that's because you guys are back together now. That's interesting. You mentioned you're learning some of these songs that you had no part in. I'm sure at that point you never, probably never thought that was going to be something. So you just kind of left it as is, and now you're going back trying to learn someone else's parts. But yeah, that was a really cool album, and I almost wish there would have been another one after that just to kind of see where it would have went. They were back with a different producer again this time, and different musicians and. So maybe I'll have to talk with one of the other guys about that of, kind of how that was for them adjusting to that after being with the same guys for a while. But yeah, a really cool album. And do you know why they went with Side One Dummy? Like the Tooth and Nail contract was just up, and so they wanted to do something different.
I think toward the end of the Tooth and Nail contract, I know we tried to get out of it at one point. And we were trying to do like the best of thing and maybe just have that count as an album. And it just never really, we had a lot of bad advice we got from a manager that we had. And he was kind of a dishonest person, and he kind of encouraged us to make bad decisions,
That's too bad.
And so we completed that contract. And I think I potentially, just to get back to it, I think maybe some of the stuff on the self-titled album was kind of half-hearted because it was, we weren't into it. It was kind of like we were kind of bummed out maybe at the time. And I don't know. Like, I think that once that deal with the Tooth and Nail was done, it was kind of easy to move on. And I don't know why they went with Side One Dummy. Like, you'd have to ask Joe or Ryan probably. But I mean, it's a good record, and I think that they sold well and they did really well. They had a lot of success for sure.
Yeah. Do you know what your best-selling album overall is?
Jackson, you have any idea? I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Man, I'm always so curious to hear these numbers, and I know back then, SoundScan wasn't really as prominent, and so a lot of these, older Tooth and Nail punk bands that I talk to, they have no idea about the numbers, and it's like, man, I'm just not that it really matters. I'm just curious, is it 10,000? Is it 50,000? Like I said, I just assumed all these bands were just, selling like crazy. So,
well, I know Burnout was more than 10,000 because I think we sold almost double that the first week it was out. But after that, I stopped, hearing any input.
So album sales didn't kind of play a part into, getting on bigger tours, or was it just Tooth and Nail said, yeah, this album is selling more, so we're going to put you on this tour?
Well, I don't know that it was always Tooth and Nail that was putting us on tours, because I think there was separate management. Am I right about that, Jeremiah?
To a certain extent. I mean, we were with Avon, which was kind of affiliated with Tooth and Nail. It's a different company, but some of the same people. And then when we started working with Chad with the Militia Group, then he started booking us on different on our own headlining tours. And one company might have like booked us on 3 or 4 festivals, and then they build a tour around it. Where you're getting. It's like, there's no guarantee. What do you mean there's no guarantee? Well, you're going to get 80% of the door. It's like, okay, so the promoter who doesn't really care if the show happens or not doesn't have to come out of pocket guarantee for anything, So we did a thing where we drove like 12 hours to a place called the Happy Church in Texas and played for like 8 people and made like $6, So
that's brutal.
And then you go from that to like, okay, now we're working with a guy who really cares. He's invested. Chad Pearson was he really cared about the bands, and he put a lot in. And when he was booking tours, he made sure, look, at least make sure they get, $400 or something. And I know it's funny to talk. I don't know what the numbers actually were. I don't know what we were getting headlining, but it seems like it was probably in that range for some. Some of the shows were probably $1,000. I mean, but it wasn't like, when I say we weren't getting rich, like, our merch was kind of paying for hotels and gas sometimes, so it was a nice change, to get to somebody who actually cared and then wanted to get us on tour with bands that we'd actually like, that stuff too. Not that we didn't like who we were touring with on Tooth and Nail, but it was like, you're lining you up with bands that maybe fit your genre a little bit more
Right.
closely.
Yeah, and there's so much that plays into that, into touring, from the label and the management and the booking agent, and I'm sure that comes with lots of frustration, wanting to grow and wanting to get on certain tours, but you're kind of waiting on somebody else to make it happen, and yeah, it definitely can become a mess at times. For the biggest and the best, did you guys have any input on which songs went into that, or was that just kind of Tooth and Nail's way of kind of just putting on another release?
I mean, Slick Shoes put another 2 or 3 new songs on there, so I wasn't part of it at the time, but I think there was some agreement there for sure. I don't know. And as far as selecting the songs, I mean, I imagine that Tooth and Nail probably, I don't know is the answer basically, but I imagine they probably said, look, this is what we're thinking. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Did you
just kind of put it back on the band? And if nobody objects, then it's like, okay, well then that's going to be what it's going to be.
I always thought, growing up, the only bands that really had best of CDs were like Bon Jovi and all these, super mainstream bands. And so there was always a part of me that was like, I mean, I always liked the whole album. I think best of CDs for those big mainstream bands is because so many of them, they had these big hit songs and then maybe a bunch of others people didn't like. But for punk bands, as myself as a fan, I love the whole album. I didn't, just buy your CD to listen to Angel or whatever the singles were, right? And so I always kind of felt annoyed at like, is this just like a cash grab? Just put a bunch of random songs on that, are supposedly the biggest hits, and is Slick Shoes going to have 18 hit songs? Probably not. They've got tons of good songs, but I just always kind of, felt like it was kind of a lame thing to do.
Thanks.
But so yeah, I don't mean that as a slight. I'm not saying you don't have lots of good songs, but I just always found it a kind of a funny thing. But anyways,
it's a good point, actually.
Yeah. So on those releases, like, do you guys get anything from those, or is that more just to finish the contract so a band can move on, and or do you guys actually see anything from those kind of releases?
The biggest and the best, by the time they did that, we had fulfilled our agreement for the contract. And so I don't know what the reason was behind it. So I imagine there was some kind of a, maybe potentially like, we'll give you a bonus or something, maybe. But I can't really speak to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fair. The last one here is Broadcasting Live, which just came out November 22nd, 2019. This was an amazing surprise for many of us, we knew that you guys, were playing some shows with MXPX and, maybe a few other one-off shows. And so what brought about the idea to actually put this to fruition and put out a live album? Was this something you guys had been wanting to do over the years, or what kind of inspired that?
Well, I'll start with saying our sound guy, Andy Alonso, he was doing sound with MXPX long before we worked with them, and we would play these shows. We played in Dallas and a few other cities around the country with them, and he kept saying, like, you guys need to do a live album. You guys need to, and we'll call it, like, he had his idea, like, call it Back from Nowhere, or or something like that. And we had pressure from other people. I think Jason was another guy that kind of said hey, you guys should do something with this. And I think we were always kind of uncomfortable. The first show we came back and played, actually, MXPX was doing Left Coast Live, and
right.
that was in 2015, and they had 2 sold out shows at the Observatory in Orange County, which is a good sized venue. I mean, I think it's like 1,200 capacity or something like that. And they just put us on the bill to be cool. I mean, the show was already sold out. They didn't need to do any. They didn't need to bring us on. Like, we weren't really going to add much to it, but they were just, bros, do you guys want to do this? And it kind of, I think that the fact that they were doing that kind of was like, inspiring maybe Andy to push us to say, you guys should do that. It was like, well, because he was like, I can mix it. You guys only have to perform it once, and then this and that. And I was like, yeah, but we have to play it really, really, really well. That one night that you're going to record. And so there was a lot of pressure behind it. It just took some, it just took a number of years and just kind of a number of talks. And finally, I think we just agreed to do it because we were going to headline a show, and I think we were trying to get money together. We're trying to figure out a way to afford to record our own album and kind of maybe do like a self-funded type of thing. And we just didn't have any money, you know. So it was like, okay, if we can do this live album, and if we can sell some units, then potentially we'll make some money. I mean, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think we wanted to, avoid doing like a GoFundMe kind of thing, just because, with the infrastructure our band has too, we might not be able to fulfill all those, guarantees that we might make, so not wanting to disappoint anybody, we just wanted to be able to do it like in-house by ourselves without making any promises we couldn't keep. Yeah. I think that was one of the things we all talked about.
Yeah, and I mean it's always kind of scary. You're kind of putting yourself out there. I mean, here we're a band that's played less. I mean, even today, like we've probably played less than 10 shows since 2015. And as loyal as the following can be, and I mean the fans that are really loyal, like we hear from them every day, and they're fantastic. But I mean, is that enough to really warrant, doing a GoFundMe? And if you don't meet your like minimum guarantee, then what happens? Morale goes out the window, and like you're never gonna hear from us again. So it's you're kind of hanging yourself out there for disappointment, and it's I don't know. So Tom Chichilla kind of helped set up the show for us. It was at a location that will not be disclosed because we're not supposed to talk about it. It
cannot be disclosed.
So yeah, so we and I mean that show, I don't know if it sold out, but it was like a 300 cap room, and it was a night to remember in a lot of ways, because we had a lot of really, really good fans that were there, and the energy was great. The stage experience was a little bit different than anything I think any of us had really experienced before. It was we were hearing like echoes and kind of looking at each other like, where are we? Like, what's going on? So yeah, you want to talk about that at all, Jackson? Or?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So even going back a bit further than that, like at what point were you guys, back together as the original lineup? What brought this all kind of back to the forefront? Maybe your kids are a bit older, you've got more time, or what makes you say like, okay, I think we can actually do this again after so much time away?
Well, I think for me, it's a few things. Like in 2008, we kind of got back together for a benefit for a friend that we all kind of had in common that had passed away, to play a show for the first time. And it was really, it was somber and sad to have lost somebody, but it was also really nice to see a bunch of old friends and feel that chemistry again. After 2008, again, we've all got families and jobs, and we all get busy. But when the opportunity came up to do that observatory show with MXPX, I think that we all just jumped on board wholeheartedly, and thought, well, hey, you know what? If we've got the time to do this, maybe we can kind of keep chugging along. And sorry, I have a Ring doorbell that probably just interrupted that. But anyway.
That's all good.
But long story short, we all miss playing with each other. We're all creative people, and we have really supportive, awesome families, and enjoyed it so much. We started turning out tunes too when we would practice for these shows. We were playing with Jonah, who was on Far From Nowhere, with all those shows, and so we developed some chemistry there and started doing some writing. And I think fill in the gaps, Jeremiah. I think it just started developing from there.
Yeah. Left Coast Live was kind of what brought us back. We had done a couple shows over the last few years. I think we played, we did the show for Randy, and then we did the show, I think Face to Face was doing, they were getting ready for like Bamboozle Festival or something, and they asked us to play with them at the Glass House on like a Thursday night, and we were like, yeah, you don't say no to that. So we did that. And I think we did some, we played with Chain Reaction one time. I think it was like probably 2012. And it got to a point where I think all of us were kind of like, well, we're kind of like pedaling uphill here. Like we have the desire to, and we love it, but it's still hard with the families. Like we still have really young kids. And I think about 2015 it was kind of like, let's just enjoy this and play these couple shows. And I think that the response was great, and the experience was great, and just being around each other again. And kind of, I think the kids got to the age where it was kind of like there was that freedom where we didn't really have to stress as much about that.
Yeah.
And so, like, as opportunities came forward, it was kind of like, well, we can't do that because I'm not going to fly and be away from my wife for a weekend, to like go play. It's hard to drag myself away from the family when I'm working, 40, 60 hours a week, So they actually flew our wives out to a show that we did. And it was kind of like all of us like hanging out in, I think it was in Dallas, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And just it was just a good time. It was just like, man, like this is what. So, and that kind of revitalized us a little bit. And yeah, I mean, it got back to like, let's maybe start writing and maybe start feeling out, what is it that, maybe we should create again. Maybe we should try to do another record. And I mean, at this time, we weren't familiar with the record industry at all. The last thing we did together with Jackson, me, Joe, and Ryan was Burnout. That was the last
crazy.
that the four of us did.
No, like this is before Pro Tools, before iTunes. We're recording on 2-inch. Yeah, we were recording on 2-inch tape. Editing was done with a razor blade and a chalk marker.
That's man. You guys must feel so accomplished, just now knowing you've got this this record done. Like, what does that feel like?
I don't know if accomplished is the right word. I'm definitely proud of what we did. I'm definitely proud. I mean, you stumble through and you just kind of figure out, and things are just so different. There was no social media when we were touring before. America Online, maybe, like if you consider that social media, where you could like get into a chat room or something, but like there was no Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff when we were touring before. So the world is just different. And so we were just kind of stumbling through, and we're just like, dude, we love to write music, but like, how do we go about doing this? And so it's a lot of like trial and error. And it's a lot of, this went really well, but then I don't like how this went. So like, why are we going to do that? Let's not do that, but there is a sense of accomplishment, I think, and a sense of, this was a long time coming. We started recording this new album in October, I think.
October of last year. Yeah.
It's going to be almost a full year by the time it's released.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the last day we recorded was like the weekend before we had to have like a total California shutdown where everybody stayed home except for essential workers.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the beginning of March or the second week of March or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge accomplishment. Like you guys made it happen, right? There was no one else that was going to force you guys to do. You chose to, sacrifice time at home and to go and write and record and all the energy and time that takes. So yeah, you guys are making a lot of people very happy. So thank you for making that decision.
Oh, thanks for listening, man, and for everybody that supported the record so far, man. It's been an incredible ride so far. The pre-orders for our new record, the vinyl, went up on Wednesday, and I think as of today there was like 12 left of one of the variants, and that's it. And we found out today because they know they're going to sell out, and they're actually going to press another 500. There's going to be 2 new variants that are going to be released here either the next couple days probably. I got permission. I talked to our A&R. I was like, is it okay to mention this? So for those vinyl collectors out there like me, like the new variants, they're really cool. I'm excited. So those should be out pretty soon.
Yeah, that's going to be such a great feeling. I'm sure it comes with a little bit of, anxiety of, I know people still care, but are they going to care enough to, spend money, especially, during a pandemic, or how many people, still buy merch or whatever it is, right? All these questions that you're kind of hopeful for. So it must be a great feeling just to see such positive feedback.
It's fantastic, man.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. Well, the first single, Whispers, is out now everywhere. So if you haven't heard it, go and check it out. Rotations and Frequency. Is that correct? That's the title?
Rotation and Frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes out September 25th. And that seems like way too far away, but looking forward to some more songs hopefully being released before then.
Yeah, you'll definitely hear more coming out. I think they staggered them, every 2 weeks, Jeremiah? There should be like 4 songs coming out.
Yeah, 2 to 3 weeks. So the next one will be the 31st of July.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this. This has been awesome. Just getting all this insider info and just getting to talk with you guys has been awesome. So thanks for taking the time to do that. Is there anything we missed or anything you guys want to add?
No, I'm good. Thanks for having us, though. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, man, and thanks for pushing. I know this has been a long time coming. We've talked about this for probably at least a year or two, right? So
yeah. Well, yeah, I wasn't ready to give up. I knew it was going to happen sometime, and just there's no rush in this, right? And this is great timing, that we can kind of build up, towards the album coming out, and so we'll hopefully do some more releases with you guys, kind of leading up to that release, because I know a lot of our listeners, have been asking for this, and I've got lots of friends that are always asking, when's the Slick Shoes interview coming? And it's like, well, it's coming sometime. So I'm very excited about that. So thank you guys so much. And I look forward to talking more with you guys in the coming months as we get prepared for this amazing release. So thanks so much, guys.
Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Cut it out, Mo.